Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to what I believe is the sixth video teaching on the Mahamudra Prayer. And we are on verse 4, and this is the second video on verse 4. In the previous one, we covered it in its more general meaning, and as I said before, this is the meaning that many of you who've done the foundations will recognize. Familiar ideas, familiar terminology, and you may feel that you know it. But remember, now we are in Mahamudra, and Mahamudra needs to be so sincere, so authentic, so very true. So today I want to explore some of the ideas in this verse further, with one particular slant and with many, many thanks to the teachings of our present Tai Situpa. As you know, we're following this prayer according to the commentary of the very famous 8th Situpanchen, Jujijongye, but also according to the direct instructions of our present Tai Situpa. If you remember last time, we saw these three qualities that we are praying for in our future lives so that we have the very special circumstances for practicing Mahamudra itself. And they are faith and diligence and wisdom, intelligence, whatever you want to call it. And also it says in this verse, may there be no obstacles to our path. So let's explore this a bit further. What will be, or could be, and I hope not, but maybe, the obstacles we will face in our practice of Mahamudra all the way up to enlightenment in our future lives. And it will be, all of those obstacles, whatever they are, will come from one source, which is ego delusion. Dharma is very, very simple. We have one way of measuring all the time if we're going in the right direction. If there is less and less and less ego, me, less and less delusions of a fixed persona, a fixed identity, then we're going in the right direction. And along with that, if there is more and more sensitivity to others, compassion, then we are going in the right direction. So what could stop us going in the right direction, which seemingly is so clearly sketched out by the Buddha's teaching? In recent times, one of the big obstacles was mentioned by Chujang Trungpa Rinpoche in a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. It is the material aspect of Dharma, what seems to be Dharma, but that may or may not be Dharma. And this idea that what seems to be Dharma may be the opposite of Dharma goes back to the very beginnings, because it's a classic mistake. Once there is an organized religion, once there is a system, once there is a material side to what in the time of the ancient yogis was a purely spiritual quest. You know, we are not yogis who've left everything, left the monasteries even, to give ourselves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to a teacher for direct mind training. Those days, those times where Naropa left the great monastic institutions to find Tilopa, where Milarepa studied with a little-known teacher called Mapa, and so on. Or the Buddha went off by himself. They are long gone. Now we have Buddhism. It is very organized. We have all these Rinpoches, all the monasteries, all the procedures. There is a whole infrastructure. some lamas, even they say, Dharma is building monasteries, Dharma is making prayer wheels, putting up prayer flags, making images, bringing lovely statues to our Dharma center, and so on and so on. They say, they call this Dharma. And it does help. It's part of the process of putting in place an infrastructure that makes Dharma practice accessible and as efficient as possible for people. But it is not in itself Dharma. It depends how it's done. If it inflates the ego, then it's the opposite of Dharma. And Karmapa describes this so well. He says, what seems like Dharma but becomes its very opposite. So this is what we're looking at today. What sort of things are this? Well, it's the things that inflate your ego, your pride. So some people say, I've been practicing Dharma for 40 years. As though in any way the number of years validated the quality of your mind. You may have wasted 40 years. As Akon Rinpoche said once, after 40 years? Gosh, after 40 years of practice, you should be so wonderful. What happened? It's like with me. I've been coming to France for, 50 years now, almost. And living here a lot of the time. And my wife is French. I should speak perfect French. But I got to a point where it was passable, and I've been lazy ever since. So the number of years, or the teachers or even you think, oh no, that teacher's my friend, I know him well, we've been buddies for a long time. Or the things you've attended. I've been to the Kala Chakra with the Dalai Lama, I've been here, I've been there, I've been to all of the Mönmams, whatever it is. If these things just make you, your I, the me, I did this, I did that, and you think that therefore I have practiced Dharma, can be a huge mistake. You'll hear it when you talk to people, the way you express yourself, and this kind of Dharma CV that you're presenting to yourself and to the world. The only point of all of it, no matter what complicated initiations you've received, what profound Mahamudra or Dzogchen teachings you've heard, it all boils down to the same thing. Are you kinder? Are you more humble now? Are you more of a friend for people? Does your mouth run away with itself less and less? Are you less inclined to criticize for selfish reasons, to put others down so you can put yourself up, and so on? So less ego is very, very important. And then more compassion. Do you find you are more and more moved because your eyes are more open? You really witness the suffering of humans, of animals. You're aware of the amount of suffering there is in the world. Something inside you longs to be able to give more, to do more. So they are the general guidelines. And in talking about this, and in introducing the Karmapa's Mahamudra prayer, the Tai Situpa found an amazing expression, which he calls unidentified flying ego. Like UFOs, unidentified flying objects, unidentified flying ego. And what he meant, I think, from his explanation, seems quite clear, is that sometimes when we've done meditations that should be done, we are much, much more aware of ourselves and of the confusion, the darkness, the complexity that's inside, of the narratives that we sell ourselves, which are often not true. They're there to inflate or protect the ego. So even though there is ego, it's identified, or at least much of it is identified, and that's an ongoing process, because as we move along the path, we'll see more and more subtle subtexts behind the ego narrative in the head. So that's identified ego, and we have some clue as to who we are, to the history we carry, and the work we have to do on our anger, on our passions, and so on. The unidentified one is much harder to work with, because somebody is still very much under the power of their illusions, and they've not seen them yet. So this is why they can attend lots of Dharma teachings, they can be very, very knowledgeable in Dharma and have retained lots of information, be able to explain ideas and concepts very clearly. All of that may be taking place because the material side of learning Tibetan language, of studying ideas, and then the other side of practice. You've done lots of prostrations, you've done this practice and that practice, you can do the Tara prayers very well and so on. All of this material side of Dharma can be well in place. And you can think, because you've got unidentified flying ego, that you're doing very, very well. I'm a Dharma practicer. But there's much more to it than that. One needs to be softening, quietening, and moving into the spirit of Mahamudra. So for that we have these three qualities of faith and intelligence, wisdom, and diligence, which were discussed a bit last time, to help us on our way. So now wisdom is the mindfulness, the awareness that helps you to see where your ego is leading you in a wrong direction. And for that kind of wisdom, we need not just our own intelligence that we've built up through Dharma study and Dharma practice, but through things like in the foundations, the Guru Yoga practice, we need to be more and more open and receptive to the lineage guidance, to the power of the protectors, to the blessing of the yidams, like Dorje Pamo or Chinrezik, whichever it is. Because then there is something beyond us that can come in and make us feel uncomfortable when we know that we are going in the wrong direction. We are manipulating people. We're manipulating Dharma practice to inflate the ego. There's an inner voice, the lineage voice, that deeper wisdom which can guide us into letting go more so that we can give more of ourselves to others, be more present for our fellow beings. So there's wisdom, and there's wisdom as knowledge, and there's wisdom which is being more and more in tune with Mahamudra, with the pure, timeless mind that's just there, waiting to help us, waiting to be discovered. In order to find that wisdom, then we have to be diligent, we have to practice, and all of the step-by-step guided teachings of shamatha and vipassana in Mahamudra are there to help us awaken that sensitivity. And the faith in the goodness of our forebears in this line carries us forward. So the big obstacle in the future will be ego, and we need to be able to get it out of the way, to avoid spiritual materialism and to find the real meaning of Dharma. And this is one thing that Tai Situpa reminds us of. In the text, for Dharma it says Dhamcha. And Dhamcha means like sacred Dharma, or the real, authentic Dharma. Not Dharma as an outer shell, not Dharma as a CV, but what the Buddha and what your Guru and what Vajradhara and the Karmapa really want to happen inside you. Ego down, compassion up. And in explaining compassion and the devotion or the faith that we need to follow this Mahamudra path, then the Tai Situpa says, some people say, yep, I have some compassion, but not much devotion. Or they say, I have a lot of devotion to the lamas, to my teacher, the lineage, but I don't have much compassion. And he says, well, that shows that one's still in a relative mindset where one separates devotion and compassion. Whereas in this Mahamudra context, devotion and compassion come from the same place, which is our intimate conviction about Buddha nature, and as time goes by, our discovery of the reality of Buddha nature. So Buddha nature gives us devotion because our forebears, the great teachers, the Karmapas, Milarepa and so on, they awakened and made completely present that Buddha nature that we have, the same as them, but we haven't awakened yet, and we haven't worked with it so that bit by bit it becomes our default nature, not the ego illusions that were there before, but this universal peace of Buddha nature. So we have devotion because of Buddha nature, and then we have compassion because although those who are suffering have Buddha nature, this treasure inside, they are living in the spiritual poverty of not just not recognizing their Buddha nature, but also suffering in very obvious ways, depending on which realm they're in. So from this one heart knowledge of Buddha nature, amazing compassion should arise for anyone who doesn't even know that it's the truth of who they are. And deep respect arises for those who are awakening it and those who've awakened it more and more, and especially those who've awakened it fully. So as I said last time, this verse is jam-packed. It gives us lots to think about. And the reason I'm explaining this today to you, from my own limited knowledge and experience, is to help you do the work that nobody can do for you, which is to think about these things, deep think, take them away, one by one. Examine your own practice, examine your own aspirations for this life and for future lives, so that you make a really excellent job of your Mahamudra practice. And in talking about this unidentified flying ego, Tai Situpa says, when somebody is still very much under the power of ego and not yet recognizing that fact, then it's very hard to help them from the outside. It must come from within themselves. And the way we help this along is by deep thinking, not just reading the ideas and say, well, yeah, I got that, I understood it, but by really giving time, giving deep thought and reflection to what the Karmapa is telling us in this particular verse, and then praying from the very depths that in future lives, in the rest of this life, but in particular in future lives, when we have a brand new chance, that we have all of those circumstances in place, a precious human existence, and the right teachers on the outside, and a qualified guru, qualified disciple. When we come together, the interaction is as good as it can be, because we are seeking authentic Dharma, and not just Dharma as a material support for our ego. Rather, Dharma because we love everybody so much. Because of our compassion, we long for Dharma, because that is what makes us a friend for the world. Thank you very much for listening, and in the next video we'll go on now to some very, very interesting verses about the practice. Thank you very much. Meditate well.